Hey folks, Tyler here. I am popping in to let you know that this is an old recorded episode, which means that you will hear me refer to myself and Aiden refer to me as Lena. Just wanted to give you some context because now I don't use that name anymore and I go by Tyler. So, anyway, grab your coffee and enjoy.
Welcome back to another Cozy Cafe chat. Grab your coffee and join us for another philosophical and silly discussion. I'm Aiden.
And I'm Lena. Let's get into it. So today we're discussing social media, and we'll talk more about a variety of things related to social media as we kind of think about it, but I hate those. But also, we wanted to give a disclaimer that there is going to be AC background noise. We're sorry, we don't have professional microphones, and also, it's like 95 degrees outside right now. With humidity.
It's a heat wave.
Guys, I don't know what to tell you.
Just
deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, but before we get into the topic for today, what are we drinking?
All right, so I have here with me a Cuban café con leche. So this morning we went to a lovely little bakery in Union City, kind of part of the Little Havana area there. It's called Las Cubanitas Bake Shop, in honor of my heritage and just Cubanness in general. We thought we would hit up this area, and this was a pretty well-known bake shop. Got a bunch of delicious pastries, and we chose a very simple yet classic Cuban drink, which is coffee, pour-over coffee, mixed with milk. Simple as that, super good. Again, I'm indulging in dairy because that is the way they do it in Cuba. So it's quite yummy, and it's hot coffee, but luckily it's not super hot in here. So it's very doable.
Shout out to the AC.
Mm-hmm.
Doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into the topic. So today we're talking about social media. Oh wait, shit, did we want to do a check-in?
Oh yeah, we should.
I guess, well, okay guys, so we're recording this the day after a couple of other episodes we recorded, so there's really not much to check in about, but we feel like that's a segment that we're going to do, so let's just do a very cursory check-in.
Yeah. Well, what I can say is, to be honest, I'm feeling a little sad that I'm leaving tomorrow.
Aiden's so sad she keeps moving her coffee thing.
I have a lot of, you'll learn all of my many twitches. Oh!
I'm giving her what is that called?
Fidget.
A fidget thing. It's like one of those things where it's like a ring, but it's like prickly, so you can roll it, and so she can make less noise while she's fidgeting.
I can satisfy my fidgeting needs.
Yes.
I'm sad that I'm leaving tomorrow. I mean, we're both actually flying back to California. So I really don't like that this trip is coming to a close. Trying to enjoy the last 2 days, though, without, fixating too much on that. So that's where I'm at right now. And I have some, work calls today, which are fine, but I would rather not have work, but, it's good I work.
C'est la vie.
Yeah. What about you?
I am on the opposite side. I'm feeling joyful that Aiden is leaving.
I hate you.
No,
the bathroom though.
Yeah. So, guys, okay. Here's the thing. I am going to be sad that she's leaving, but the one thing that I'm very much looking forward to is not having to share my bathroom. So this is it's technically like a 3-bedroom, you could call it, 1 bathroom. Really, we only use one as a bedroom. Everything else is occupied with office stuff and workout stuff. But the bathroom is not the biggest because I live in Jersey City in the historic downtown area. And normally I'm not sharing it with somebody else who takes nearly as long in the bathroom as me, or let's be real, longer than me to take showers, do facials, all this stuff.
Facials?
Whatever. Skincare. It's the same thing. But, so I am looking forward to that. Also, I think when it gets hotter out, I get more cranky when people are in my space.
Definitely. Which is valid.
Yeah, so
I feel the same way.
I'm a little bit irritable. But not because it's Aiden, because it's Aiden.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, not like because of like your personality, but because you take so fucking long.
I'm a human who does things
that take a really long time. And then like last night, she was like sitting on her phone, and then like I wanted to go wash my face, and she like chose to go wash. She was standing in the bathroom the entire time. Chose to go wash her face the moment I went over there after like 3 minutes, and I'm like, "What were you doing this whole time?" She was like, "I was like on my phone." Okay.
I was also a little high, disclaimer, so I was like walking around in circles.
Yeah, that's her excuse for everything.
Yeah,
she's high right now. That's why she's fidgeting so much.
Totally. I'm not high.
Another disclaimer.
Just on caffeine and life.
All right. Well, I guess that's our check-in.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to the topic. We're talking about social media.
Yeah.
Sorry if you can hear that.
Now who's hitting tables?
I'm impressed that you haven't been like shifting around too much in that chair.
I've been conscious of it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks.
So what? I think you actually, we have the notes app that has like the list. We've talked about it before. I think you put this on here.
I think I did too.
Do you remember why? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah. I do. Well, I first want to say that there are, like with so many topics, but especially this one, because social media is very broad, there's a number of directions we could go with it. So I think we should just kind of see where this goes, because there are so many different facets of this that we could bring up. But I know that I put it on the list largely because we have had a lot of conversations about social media throughout the years, and we both have different and unique relationships with social media and I guess opinions of social media as a whole. So this is one of those concepts where like a lot of our ideas differ, but I think for the most part we understand where the other's coming from. But I think it would be an interesting dialogue to open up, like between us and with listeners, whoever else like is really interested in this topic. Those are things that can be cut. Yeah. Just because it is so relevant, like pretty much like wherever. I mean, not most people. I will say most people, at least in like our realm in our generation, are affected in some way by social media. Whether they're active participants in it, whether they're more like on the outside, most people have some relationship to it. So I think that's why I put that on the list. Okay. Kind of for all those reasons. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I think it'd be interesting to just like examine where we're coming from with our opinions of it.
Well, yeah. Okay, going off of that then, I think that the main difference that we have is that, so I use certain social media sites more than others. So, I mean, I've been using social media for a while now. I mean, like, you know, to be fair, I'm, as you all know, 25. And so I was in the generation where, like, I was using, like, MySpace when I was in middle school. I really think that was the first, like, actual social media. I mean, there were, like, other websites that kind of served a function similar-ish to social media. Aiden's making more noise. It's great. But I think that, like, the first big site that I got on was Facebook, of course. Now I really don't use Facebook very much because there's a lot of, like, old people.
Not ageist at all.
Not ageist at all. Shout out to my parents, who loves Facebook. But I like, mostly use Instagram and Twitter now, and I've had both of those since I was, like, or all three of them, I think, since I was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. I haven't used all of them as religiously. And it's fluctuated. Like, I used Facebook a lot when I was in high school, and Instagram. Then I switched to, like, Instagram for a period of time, and now I feel like I use Twitter mostly. And there's, like, different vibes that you get. And to be honest, it's also, like, what accounts are you connected to, right? Because I think that's another thing we could talk about is, like, Instagram. Like, if you follow, like, certain people, you're getting a very different experience than, like, I think the people that I follow, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and is your experience with it mostly, like, whether it's mostly following and consuming content versus, like, putting out content or somewhere in the middle? Because I feel like those are definitely, like, differing experiences of social media.
That's interesting.
You have TikTok, right?
I do have TikTok.
But, like, do you mostly just...
Oh, I've never put out a TikTok. I'm, like, too self-conscious to put out a TikTok, unless somebody, like, forces me to at some point in my life. I don't know.
Somebody, like...
If in like a music career or something, somebody like forces, you know what I mean? Like that's the only context in which I could see myself doing that. I respect people who do it. Yeah, I totally think it's very great. But I'm the same way on like Twitter. I mean, like on Twitter, I never like actively like post things unless it's like a good picture, which there are a lot of those. But I usually just retweet people because other people say things more better than me.
More better, clearly.
And then like so Instagram, I'll like post more, but not that much either. I feel like I'm like a lurker on social media. Yeah. Like okay, and you tell me that's like kind of my background. We can talk more about that, but like tell me about like what your background is and like what your role is on social media.
Yeah. So it's non-existent. Okay, not fully. But here's the thing. So I don't have any social media other than Facebook, which I love the reason I got Facebook. So when I started at St. Mary's and joined choir, where as we've mentioned, Lena and I met, the main form of communication for choir was Facebook. Like that's where our directors would post rehearsal information, homework assignments, everything. So it was like basically a requirement for me to get Facebook, and I was like all pissed off, like I didn't have social media, I thought I was never gonna, and then I was like, okay, like whatever. And it was for a while just like I had like 2 friends and no photo, and eventually I was like, I guess if I have this, if I have this account, I might as well fill in somewhat of a profile, because it's like there are reasons Facebook can be useful. I mean, I think for our generation those are diminishing somewhat, but like there are a lot of links to like other accounts and just like family who I have on there who mainly use Facebook. But I don't post anything except like occasionally change my profile photo. But yeah, I don't post anything. I don't like really interact on it in any way. I use it mainly for people's birthdays. My voice, did you hear that? If there are like any important things like events, I check it like maybe once a day. And that is the extent of my social media presence and experiences. And like a lot of people, I would say most people, like when they find out I don't have social media, like are very anywhere from like surprised to confused, impressed, like disappointed. Like there's a lot of different reactions. And how I always explain it is that I don't have anything like severely, I don't have a severe problem with social media, like in and of itself. I never actively resisted it. I guess by not getting it, you could say I was actively resisting it, but it was kind of just a matter of like, as I grew up and I saw people getting social media and like new platforms emerged and developed, like I simply didn't feel the need or desire, like I had the time to get these forms of social media, and so I didn't, and then time went on and I just never did. And so like that's kind of the simple way to describe it. But I do have like, of course, more and more nuanced thoughts about social media. Like I definitely do take issue with it in some regards, and I know I am biased from my experience of not having it. I think too I should mention that part of my deciding against getting it wasn't just like I passively, as time went on, I just never did it, but like that I felt like it could be very toxic to me personally with who I am. And I think that brings up points we could talk about like how that can affect an individual's and groups like self-esteem and self-worth and all that, which are pretty like commonplace conversations nowadays. But I felt that as a young person who's very hypercritical of myself and self-conscious, it could be really toxic to me. And to be honest, like I somewhat still feel that way. I think part of it is because like I don't have social media, and so I don't have that experience.
Well, but even like on Facebook, I feel like people talk about, I kind of understand this. I don't get this on Facebook because, like I said, I don't really use it. But do you feel like, I feel like the conversation often centers around expectations, particularly for people who are in their like mid-20s, seeing other people and where their lives are, and thinking about, oh, how does mine compare to this one person who's like famous and like has a shit ton of money, or to this person who's, you know, got a like stable job that's like in a certain field and is, you know, gonna get a house or having kids. Like I feel like there's other things, I think, particularly with like body image and that kind of stuff that we could talk about too, but like first I think on Facebook that's a big thing. Facebook and Instagram, that's so true. What are people doing and how do you compare yourself to those people, you know?
Because I feel like that arguably could be one of the main purposes or uses of Facebook from people of our generation, is like basically it's a page where you show what you look like and your titles basically, and that's kind of what I've realized. It's like we're not using it, most of us are not using it to post, react, respond, interact. Again, some people are, but for the most part I think a lot of it is like, this is my name, this is what I look like, this is what I represent visually, and then these are my titles. So I think with that, I mean, what's interesting is not long ago, just a couple months ago, I actually like updated my Facebook to reflect my current jobs. And I remember just thinking like, oh, I better put my more important sounding job first and that kind of thing, even though it is my more part-time job. Like, so I definitely had that on my mind. And I don't typically, well, for a while I never friended anyone. I was like, I'm only gonna like accept friend requests if I receive them and they're people I know. Now I have, and I don't even know what compelled me to actually start friending people. I guess I was sort of like, well, this is the only way that I have an online presence, and there are some people from like my youth and high school that I'm like interested to just see, but then I'm not actually looking at their profile, so I do question myself. I'm like, what is the purpose of this? But I definitely do feel that, and I mean it's like, and I don't think we need to get into fucking LinkedIn, but like
that's exactly what it made me think of,
because I feel like Facebook is the still considered social media version of that, and LinkedIn is the sort of professional Facebook. I fucking hate LinkedIn. I'm sorry if anybody works for LinkedIn or is all about it, but like it stresses me out so much. I only used it because like I had to for, you know, some professor made me, but so I think there's that element on Facebook, most definitely. I do want to ask your thoughts on that. I also, before I forget, I do want to mention and maybe open this up to discussion, but about like that's a kind of its own topic, but like the idea of missing out and like the sort of like interactions and connections that come from having social media engagement. And that was kind of, I think, where a lot of questioning comes, is like people wondering how and if I am like engaged with like other people. And I think my response is always like, the people who I want to talk to, like I will actively like have a conversation, whether that's like via text or phone, you know, and that like, because it's the idea of like, oh, but you can, if you don't like want to or can even always be talking to people, it's like you can follow them and see what they're up to. And
interact
I think that
with
is
them
kind
there.
of
That's interesting. I thought you were talking about like, which kind of relates to the other idea. I thought you were talking more about when people will like post that they're doing things and you're like, oh, I'm not there, or like, because that's like, don't get me wrong, I interact with people online, but it's, once again, like you said, it's people that I theoretically wouldn't like be opposed to texting. I don't really like choose to, unless someone like posts something that I'm like, oh, this is really cool, congratulations or whatever. Aiden is drinking her water really weird. She like stuck her tongue in the water bottle.
Wow.
How is that helping with the
Because then I'm not like slurping.
Okay. So Aiden's making out with a water bottle.
Yeah, I mean, what else is new? Everyday occurrence.
That's her main daily activity. Actually, kind of, but
kind of all throughout the day.
Making out.
Sometimes
it depends on how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, because that's what it made me think of, because I've always had more of a thing with that, where like, oh, these people are hanging out, and like, I'm not there, or like, oh, these people seem a lot more connected than I realized they were, because now I'm seeing them like either interact a lot online, or post pictures together and like doing stuff together.
Yes.
Which I feel like does go back to this idea of like, once again, well, and this is like a whole other conversation too, like people only post, or people rarely post things that aren't like, I'm going out and having fun, right?
Yes.
Like you don't post like, hey, I'm like depressed in my bed. I mean, unless you're on like Finsta or something. I mean, people do that sometimes, but it's not as common.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're comparing like every day of your life to the fun days, and like we all have those fun days.
Exactly.
But then like when it's people that you know, there's like an added like thing of like, I'm missing out on like how other people are engaging in their lives. And I do think that in our 20s in particular, that's a real challenge, right? Feeling
absolutely.
like I don't know if I should be more professional and like, you know, not going out as much and doing stuff,
or doing more, or
somehow both, which
more.
seems like an impossible catch-22.
Or somehow both. And I think that that's a big, like, something to...
That's a big something, too.
That will be cut, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, acknowledging and examining that, like, I think, and again, I say a lot of this from an outside perspective, right? Like, I don't actually have these forms of social media. I do, however, like, have a general understanding of them. I mean, I learn new things and I'm like, I didn't know that's how those things work. But like, people kindly show me many things on social media. So I say all this just from like what I've seen kind of from that outside perspective. But there's often like this portrayal of both those things. Like, look at me being successful and professional, and look at me partying and having fun. Like, I have it all, and I look hot doing it.
Yes. Yeah, and then once again, that goes into the whole thing that I always think about, where it's like, okay, and then, like, you also have time to, like, presumably, like, work out and eat really healthy. Or do you not, and you just, you know, like, have certain genetics that make you look that way. And you know what I mean? And then, like, oh, I have enough time. And, like, it's this weird, like, lack of time, but then you also want to be able to portray a certain image, which is why I feel like I lurk a lot on social media. I'm like, don't get me wrong, when I do post things, like I said, it's usually like, ooh, I look good. Someone like posts this like selfie of me.
As you should.
As everybody should. Continue posting cute pictures of yourselves. But like, there is this sense of like, and then the whole feed thing. That's become such a thing. Like, how does your whole feed like give off a vibe, you know? And what is the expectation surrounding that? I mean, I know that for me, I've gone through on Instagram, on my main Instagram, I have a Finsta that I've like kind of started using as like a real one now. But on my main Instagram,
my dad follows.
Your dad follows my Finsta for some reason.
Hilarious.
I mean, he's very cool though, so I'm not mad at it.
Yeah. Of all parents
to follow, I'm not mad. But on my main Instagram, I keep just like deleting or archiving old posts because I'm like, oh, like I don't know that I want. You know, I looked back at like my high school photos and like, oh, I don't want this like representing who I am now. You know, and it's this weird thing of like the curated, like you have like the 3 squares and like what do you make with the three squares? But then like, you know, there's such stereotypes and like ideas of people associated with the way their Instagram looks. When you look at somebody's Instagram, you're like, oh, this person's like artsy. This person's like a basic bitch. You know what I mean? Like, and there's like stereotypes that really come along with those that even on Facebook to some degree, but it's just really interesting to think about that.
Yeah. Some of which are somewhat representative of the person and some of which are completely
inaccurate.
And inaccurate.
Arachnids.
We love messing up words.
And repeating after each other.
It's like we'll go through it. We're like, you'll be repeating a lot of what I say, and then vice versa.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because we both think that like the thing is funny, so we say it again because we think it's funny, but then it like becomes repeating. We also like to make fun of ourselves for saying anything that sounds even remote. We sing.
We're losing it.
It's also so fucking hot.
It's so hot.
You guys can hear the AC, and yet it's like not doing enough.
I was like, yeah, hot coffee's fine because it's cold in here. That's like honestly a total lie. Like I'm realizing like we're like melting slowly. Yeah, I do feel like that. But anyway, yes. Oh, there's so many different ways like my mind is going with this, and I think bringing up the concept of like curating Instagram and a social media profile is really important because that's where all these conversations about like people are so fake and being fake and everything come up, which like are definitely important conversations to have, but I do think like it is deeper than that, and there are, and again, this is coming from me who is like not the biggest fan of social media, but I think that there is a lot more to social media, and especially nowadays, because like, yes, we can talk about, of course it's important to acknowledge, and we have sort of acknowledged it in some level in regards to the sort of comparisons that come from having a presence on social media or just having social media. I think with that, like, it's important to acknowledge how damaging social media can often be to someone's, especially like young, rather impressionable people, like their self-esteem, self-image, seeing certain beauty standards, ideals, and images portrayed. Like, that is in and of itself like a whole conversation, and I think often what comes to mind when people think of negative effects of social media. And, like, that is very much still a thing. It has been for a really long time. I think with that also comes the addictive side of it, which also should be acknowledged. And again, I'm, like, acknowledging these because, like, we don't necessarily have to go super deep into them, but it's just, like, points on my mind that I didn't want to gloss over. And I think, like, those are two aspects that, for me personally, really irk me about it. Like, seeing, again, kind of from the outside, but also realistically also someone on the inside in this sort of liminal space, like seeing the addiction to social media and technology in general, but seeing friends, peers, family even at certain points in their life, and maybe now, maybe in the past, being so really addicted, because it is a genuine addiction. Some people have it more than others. Some people have those tendencies, so I don't want to, like, invalidate, like, a genuine addiction, but also acknowledge that, like, technology and social media, like, have a lot of addictive pulls. And so seeing a lot of people that I know and beyond kind of, like, falling into that and becoming so dependent and reliant, that's kind of troubling to see, and that is so much larger scale. But I do want to, like, just address the points you said about oh my god, what were you saying about comparison and stuff, and like seeing how there's these different sides of, like, feeling like one is missing out / comparison. There's, like, because when I brought that up, I was thinking more the first thing I said, but really also what you mentioned of, like, there's or seeing, like, everything that everyone is doing and feeling like, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing enough. Also, oh, these people are doing these things and together, and I'm being left out, and where am I? And I think that, like, where do I fit into all of this too? So I think those are just a couple, like, points that I wanted to bring up. Can you pause? I really have to go to the bathroom.
So Aiden's back from the bathroom.
Ooh.
Putting you on blast.
I'm feeling okay.
I will. So we've talked a little bit about our general experiences and, like, past with social media and just some general thoughts. We thought it would be helpful, because this is, like, so big that, like, we're getting a little scattered, to frame it in terms of some kind of pros and cons that we each see. And talk a little bit about that. So do you want to start with the pro?
Yeah, definitely. So I think a really significant pro of social media that has emerged more so in recent years, at least, like, in the wake of recent events. For example, I mean, from when the Black Lives Matter movement was established in 2013, I think. I'll fact check that. Social media has been a platform for these movements, these organizations.
No, I'm laughing. Sorry, there's a horn in the background.
Like, no. I'm always just like, wait, did I say something?
No.
And so I think that social media can be a platform for activism, for allyship, we can't fail to mention that the murder of George Floyd became more widely known because it was tragically but necessarily shared on social media.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of, I mean, like, I even think of, like, Arab Springs, how that was, like, linked to Twitter.
Oh, yes.
And I think there's just this idea that we've seen more of what other people in the world experience now more than ever, which can be overwhelming, of course, but is necessary. Like, we understand and can see the lived experience of other people that we wouldn't get to see prior to social media, and especially, you know, the fact that, like, newspapers only talk about specific things in specific ways, and they're very biased inherently, so we get to see, like, actual people's lives outside of our area.
Exactly. And what's interesting is I feel like there is kind of another side to that, like, also a couple, like, we could go, you know, you can go the route of, like, it can be, like, overwhelming, and sometimes, well, misinformation is its own thing, but also that, like, there can be a lot of performative activism on social media.
For sure.
And I think it's very hard often to distinguish what is, like, what is genuine activism and what is performative activism. So kind of that's the other side to the coin. But, like, I do think that, especially as social media continues to evolve, it continues to be a very significant platform for widespread collective knowledge, information, action.
So true. Can be. Isn't inherently. Yeah, that actually, I mean, that goes to one of my cons, which was the conspiracy theory thing. I mean, it, like, that's a whole topic. We could talk about that completely separately, and we won't get much into it today, but it's the spread of misinformation, and there's a lot of, like, I think, psychological things behind that, and, like, who we trust and who we don't, and, you know, it's very important that, yes, we might not trust and shouldn't trust certain people, but right, like, how are we consuming this information? And unfortunately, I think in the United States in particular, a lot of people, first of all, lean very heavily on emotion, but think that they're thinking logically. And then there's also, like, a lack of critical thinking, and that's not really taught in school because, you know, in order to sit down and shut up in class, you know, you don't want to be taught to, like, think critically.
Exactly. They want to encourage you to question it. I think that's really significant, and with that, this kind of does illustrate a con that also then another, if that's, like, kind of the opposite of it, can be a pro, and that's, like, just awareness of current events in general, because it's interesting, like, that's an issue, is that there is so much information, there is so much fake news, and that gets spread, circulated on social media, consumed widely by folks who, like you said, haven't necessarily been taught to think critically, and they see the source is coming from someone they know or a source they trust because it is from their area or their culture or their political orientation, and that can be so easily consumed, assimilated, synthesized, and then that becomes someone's truth and beliefs, even when they're often full of so much false and erroneous information. And then at the same time, I think it's interesting because social media can highlight significant news events, and like, I mean, reputable, quote unquote, reputable news sources have a presence on social media, and in more, I guess, common, that's not the right word, but like organic ways, current events and occurrences are often displayed and shared on social media.
That's so true. I think with like the protests last year, I mean, there was a lot of things that in the like traditional news wouldn't have been covered that you were able to see. Like when I was, you know, on Twitter, that was something that was you were able to see videos of people getting tear gassed, and you know what I mean. Like these interactions that like obviously a lot of news sites that are, you know, have connections, use police officers as like, what's the word? Sources. You know what I mean? Like, to be honest, with a lot of like more established news, they have like outside interests that influence what they share and what they don't share. And that's become obvious in like, you know, how people who are criminalized are portrayed and how that relates to race, right? Like there's a lot of things that are you're able to challenge when it's just a person posting a video.
Exactly.
But then it's like you could go like it's like Russian doll. You could go infinitely. It's good and bad and good and bad. There's like good parts and bad parts of all of this.
Yep. And that's where that critical thinking is so important, because like being able to sort of disseminate like and determine what is the good and what is
Yes.
bad, or at least like what is the solid information that has some truth, and
Mm-hmm.
then what is like completely like flawed and frivolous. And so it is really hard to know. And I do want to like kind of along with that share from my personal experience and observations. Like I do sometimes think, and I have questioned, like, you know, maybe as a citizen and member of society and whatnot, like maybe I should have, or as someone who tries to be an informed citizen, a member of my communities. That sounds so like white. Like I'm a member of my communities, and my name's Karen. Just kidding.
Who are you? Your mom?
My mom's name is Karen. She's not a Karen. Anyway, though, I do sometimes wonder if like maybe I should have social media. You know, it's like, and I at the end of the day, I realize it's like I shouldn't feel like I should like an obligation to have this in order to be whatever, a better, more contributing member to society, like that kind of thing. But I will say I see from my like personal realm definitely some benefits with being informed. So I'm gonna give a shout out to Tanner, my lovely boyfriend, who is very like kind of like you, Lena. Like he would say he's a lurker on social media. Like he doesn't post much, but he's very like up to date on like what's going on Twitter. And well, he follows certain.
Yeah.
Do you follow people on Twitter? You follow them, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Follow them.
But I do, by way of him and what sources he follows on social media, like I learn a lot about current events that like because I kind of control the news alerts I get on my phone. Like I want to be informed, but that's like up to a point, and that's a whole other topic. But like I feel like through like I learned so much about this happened, what's going on, because it's like he has the capacity, he thinks critically a lot, and is aware of what and who he's following and how like truthful or verifiable that information is. And so it's like that's the benefit there of like having that capacity to like question, disseminate information, think critically, and then consuming like information can create a further awareness of what is going on in different like facets of life. So no, that's really important. And I also think that you don't need to like be on social media. It's a way to gain different forms of information, but I mean it's also can be a way to, you know, be disconnected. And I also think that this is once again a topic that we won't get too much into, but like the whole like bubble concept, you know, which is very real, that like you follow people who think like you usually, and so like you will learn information, and it's valuable to gain information about what's going on. Now, every source is biased to some degree, right? Like nothing can be inherently lacking in bias because your own perspective is a source of inherent bias. But that it can be really easy, and I think this came up a lot with, you know, obviously with Trump's election and just in recent years, the idea that like we have no idea sometimes what other people are thinking. And it's very easy to think, oh, well, I follow all these people online who all think very similarly to me and have these same interests and beliefs, and then, oh, shoot, like, you know, a million people in this country do not think this way. And it was so easy to be, even from like not being on social media around the time of the 2016 election, like really realizing, like, I think for so many of us in liberal bubbles of California and other parts of the world, but the country, but we are referring to our experience having been in California, like just being so unaware of what the thought process and beliefs were in other parts of the country. And it's just like that bubble is represented social media and just in like the people you talk to, the communities you're a part of. So that is interesting. Mind if I share another pro I just thought of? I feel like, oh my god, what was it? Oh! More like that. So, finding community. And I don't know, you might have, I don't know if I feel like this might have been on your list too, but, you know, it's like, there are so many marginalized identities and communities that are, because of systems of power and oppression, highly disadvantaged, underrepresented, as we
Yeah.
we talked about in our last episode, representation a lot, and there is often they're not given a voice necessarily, and there's a lot of isolation and alienation present. And social media can be a place for folks to find a voice, but also to seek and find community.
Yeah.
Like, you probably have more experience like seeing this on social media, but specific like groups and pages and accounts regarding a certain like cultural group or identity group or something
that's
like
so
that.
real. Yeah, I think and like more niche communities too, like
yes.
communities that people might not have, like you said, have thought about. I also think even like going back to the representation conversation, like the whole critique of like lack of diversity in the Heights with like Afro Latinx representation probably wouldn't have been as publicized without social media. So there's a lot of conversations that members of communities who are actually part of the community can, like you said, who have been disenfranchised, can speak up and be heard on a on a wider scale than they would be in other areas or other like contexts probably prior to social media. It's I think that's a really positive. That's like related to a pro of mine. Just in general, staying connected to other people, and there can be negative connections on social media, but there's a lot of positive of like, hey, I am not alone in this experience. I always think of like, even just like when you write something and somebody likes it, it's like it can have a negative thing of like the validation and like the whole like like when you get like a ding of a notification.
Instant gratification. And the addictive process behind that.
And there's like negatives to it as well. But to be honest, it is like nice to be able to say like, hey, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, and it doesn't always have to be like purely a bad thing.
Yes, exactly.
Which like all of this, it's interesting as we're talking about this. Like a few years ago, even I would have been like the most staunch like anti-social media person, but like okay, that's a bit extreme. And maybe like more than a few years ago, but it is like there are a lot of benefits to it. I just think it's like, I mean, so much evolves, and I think social media has evolved a lot throughout time and will continue to do so, like for better or for worse, but I think it's like certain ways that it can be beneficial have been like refined, creating these spaces and these platforms. It's like that's continuing to evolve, and I hope that continues to evolve in a positive way. I think too, like the widespread like addiction is going to continue to increase, and then that's where there's definitely that con there.
Well, I think the other like positive thing that you're talking about with this growth is the idea that like there's more critiques out there of social media now, and there's a lot of like even accounts that my phone keeps on blowing up because people want to talk to me.
Wow.
And
talk
it's like
about
flipped
that
over.
Ding of validation.
No, but I keep seeing you look at the phone. I know that you're
because it's the thing, where there's like a light shows up on a phone, and like talk about literally like addictive pulls, like our eyes are drawn to them even if it's someone else's phone and we're not like being nosy.
We're always being
we're always a little. I mean, no, that's part of it actually.
That's 100. Like it's like, oh, who's texting you?
Texting you? Yeah. You're with me. Like you have no one else to talk to.
No, but I think that like there's a lot more critiques online and like accounts that are pointing out, hey, I'm Instagram famous and I don't look perfect all the time, and all of these pictures that I take are very posed, and like there's a lot of things that are like bringing to light all of the stuff that I think when social media first started to become more prevalent, there wasn't as much behind the scenes, and now some people still don't know, or maybe that doesn't change the way that they feel in response to seeing things, but at least there's more awareness that like, hey, this is not an accurate representation of real life for most people, and in fact, people in ways have learned to become more vulnerable, whether with communities or about, like struggles with like mental health. I mean, there's a lot of positives that have come out in some like groups recently.
And that made me think, like you said, and I love how we are like connecting this to past conversations. Like you just spoke about mental illness, and you were talking about like there being more niche communities and spaces. Spaceships. Niche. I can't even talk when I'm mocking myself. Oh my god. Niche spaces or spaceships, you know, if you want,
Yeah.
on social media, but there being a space for discussion of mental health and mental illness, because you were talking about when we had our conversation about productivity culture and capitalism and how mental illness is still, like, while there is an increasing awareness of it, it's still rather niche. And I know that you and I both occupy spaces where mental illness is an open dialogue and conversation for the most part, but that's not like
representative.
Majority representation, and like it's still not fully a mainstream conversation, more so among our generation, but even then. And so I think it's like social media does often provide the spaces for conversations around mental illness and that feeling of like, oh, I'm not alone. And I think that's like really huge, like really important. And then on the flip side of that, they can be very damaging to one's mental health as well.
I mean, with that one, I always think about like Tumblr, and I forgot that I even had a Tumblr, but how like, I don't know if you remember like the whole like first of all, like glorifying like mental illness and like specific elements of mental illness and eating disorders in particular. That was a huge thing.
That was a huge thing. And I remember because I did I've done several research papers on eating disorders, like there being, and I wonder if this is still the term that's used, but like, see, that's something you can cut. I don't have to be like, pro-Ana.
Oh my god.
Basically glorifying anorexia, and not only glorifying it, but also providing information on like how to be anorexic.
Yeah.
Like,
so gross.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I mean, that still has, like, I don't know that is in the way it used to be on Tumblr specifically, but that is still like a common use of social media for body shaming and like triggering / exacerbating issues with body image, disordered eating, and eating disorders. So like that's definitely like a very, very detrimental aspect, an element of it. For sure. And like I do know, like I've had conversations recently with a couple people like very close to me, about how like hurt they feel, and people who are closer to our age, like not teenagers anymore or anything, but like feeling like they've just had too much time on social media that has like over those years become, it's like insidious in a way of like they don't even realize just how harmful it has been and is, and feeling like they just need to step away from it, but feeling like that's almost impossible because of how involved they are with it.
That's so real.
So I think that is like a very real and present like ramification of having social media from like relatively earlier age. So I don't know, it's really tricky.
Well, and even then it's kind of funny to me because I know that with age and that whole conversation, you know, I know that I see people who are older and not like, you know, the oldest people in the world, but like, you know, people who are like in like the generation or two above us who kind of have this idea that like they don't use social media that much, that do.
They totally
but
do.
You know what I mean? And it's the similar pattern. It's not the same as having grown up with it, but it's so funny to me to see, because there's always this conversation of like, oh, you know, like you kids, you use your phone so much. And I'm like, yeah, but so do you.
So do you.
And it's interesting. It goes to show the what's it called? The addictive nature of it, and this kind of idea of like, oh well, I associate it with younger people, so therefore as an older person, I am not affiliated with this, even though I consistently pull my phone out at the table or whatever.
And with that attitude, like, oh, I'm not affected, like I'm not subject to this, but it's like, no, I mean, and first of all, you are.
Yes.
You have the same sort of like addictive nature as like younger people do too in a lot of ways, and it's like to be so like dismissive of it is even more damaging, because then it's like basically not letting you be at fault.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean?
In denial.
In denial.
Yeah.
In denial,
100%.
essentially.
I wrote the word ageism because this is, once again, I think this could be a whole other conversation, and I think that we probably should have a conversation about ageism.
Oh, definitely. I'll add that to our list.
But that is such an issue on social media, and I think about, actually recently on Instagram they have like reels, and I'm pretty sure it's like reels that are reposted TikToks, But there's been ones recently where it's like, oh, it's like the background music is like International Super Spy, which from
Super what?
Super Spy
Oh.
from some show that I don't know.
Oh.
Cocomelon maybe? I don't know. I'm making shit up.
Cocomelon.
Yeah, fact check me if you're a Cocomelon diehard and you're upset that I got that wrong. But I think that like there's that. Oh, what am I saying? That recent trend is like these people who like, who cares how old you look, right? But are like, oh, people thinking I'm 18 and really I'm like 28 or 30, which first of all aren't that old of ages. They act like they're like super old. And second of all, it's like this weird like thing of I have to be undercover as like a younger person, and usually they're women, and there's gender tied into that. But kind of this idea of like I cannot present as old and how that's aggravated on social media. And I'm like, I see these videos, I'm like, who cares if you do look 28 and you're 28, right? Like, first of all, what the hell does that even mean?
What does that mean? What does the, and
like, why do you want to look like an 18-year-old if you're 20? You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of creepy. And why do men want you to look like an 18-year-old? That's creepy too.
Because that's often a
Exactly.
Misogyny.
Yep.
Yeah, and talk about that on social media. Okay, I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're trying to get off. We probably should. Well, we'll cut a lot of it.
We'll cut a lot of it,
I think it would be interesting to at least mention like the concept of Finsta and everything. And because I think it's very interesting, but I want to get your thoughts on it, and like, because you have a Finsta, right?
Yes.
And how do you view that for yourself and other people?
So that's actually, I think that really brings up the whole point of like Instagram is clearly used as like a portrayal of who you are. And so the idea is, so my main Instagram was the one that I started with, obviously, and I used to use that in the way that I think maybe people use Finsta now, which is more like quote unquote shit posting. So like posting like either like word vomit, like, oh, I have to like vent about this, or oh, here's like kind of like a weird picture that like I think is funny and maybe like I want some people to see, but not everybody. And so I had Instagram, like a normal, just plain Instagram for a while. And then in college, I got a Finsta. And I think part of that is that, like, there were some things that I wanted to be able to talk about, some of them being, like, mental health issues, like identity-related topics that I didn't know that I could trust everybody on, like, my main Instagram. And now there's the close friends list, which I do think changes that landscape that you need the Finsta. You don't need it as much, I don't think.
Can you do that with... Is it just with stories, or is it with...
I think it's just with stories, that's my understanding. And so, like, that's why I created the Finsta. And what's funny, like I said, is now I really almost never use my main, like, quote-unquote main Instagram. I primarily use my Finsta. But something that I've been trying to do, because I used to use it as, like, almost like a diary. But that I, like, so other people could see it. And, like I said, be able to talk about, like, I'm dealing with, like, this... like issue right now. I'm like really depressed, whatever, I'm like thinking about like what does my identity mean and like who am I, and I sometimes still use it for that. But what's funny is now I've started giving people that I meet, but besides the people like from my past who I trusted to allow, I've just started giving people my Finsta, because like that's like what I use now. But it's kind of challenged this thing for me, where I'm trying to like either just not post something if I don't want to post something, which I don't have to, or be more open when I do post and not feel like everything has to be totally curated. Because that's where that idea comes from, is if I post this on this main Instagram, not only do I have people that I'm like about, but I have like, tons of people have followed that Instagram. And so it's like people from high school that like, they don't know who I am anymore. And, like I don't necessarily know that I want them to know who I am now. And I don't trust these people and their opinions, and they like some of them kind of suck, and that's fine. I also think there's something to be said for some people who have Finstas about like a lack of like comfort with vulnerability with like everybody, and like to be honest, that's actually more normal, right? Like you're not like, unless you're oversharing, you typically aren't sharing every element of your like personal life with a bunch of people that you like went to high school with but never talked to again, right? So in a way, it's kind of more accurate. And that's why I'm using my Finsta now as the real one, because it's like these are people that I like and trust who follow it, and they can see these things, but not everybody in the world has to be seeing what I'm doing. Just because you happen to have known me 7 years ago doesn't mean that you should be like privy to all of the details of my life.
Don't describe that.
You don't. If you're listening to this and you follow my main Insta but not my Finsta, you do not deserve it.
Oh my goodness. Just out of curiosity, do you follow like the clothing pages? Do you follow those with both Instagrams, with your Finsta?
No, it's my Finsta.
Oh, Oh, that is so
Yeah, I buy a
interesting.
lot of clothes on Instagram because I have addictive tendencies. It's fine. But yeah, we've been talking about it a lot. I'm actually wearing something I bought off Instagram right now.
Oh my God, no
Shout out.
way.
Yeah, I know, shocking. That every time I put on an outfit while Aiden's here, it's like, where did you get this? Instagram. But yeah, like every
That's so
account that I care about now, I follow on my Finsta.
That's so interesting. So yeah, I'm glad that you enlightened me on that, because when I first heard about Finsta at some point in college, like my first couple years of college, I think, I thought it was just so interesting because it seemed to me like, isn't Finsta with, fake Instagram technically, or isn't that sort of more representative of like the real you or whatever, which I thought
so true.
was so interesting, because then it just sort of points to the fact that like Instagram really can be, and historically maybe has more been about creating a curated profile and like a visual representation of aspects of yourself that you want to highlight and who you want to be. And I'm not saying it's always like that for everyone or has been, but I feel like that is very much a theme within that site. And that Finsta is and I don't know like the history of Finsta, when that started being a thing, who knows? But as I learned of it, it really seemed like, oh, that was like the more real, quote unquote, representation of a person, whereas I've heard people say Rinsta, I guess,
which is
like
real Insta,
Insta is like what you want the world to see.
Interesting. So it's like kind of like the opposite. Yeah, that's so true.
Oh shit. Oh darn! I went this whole time without like.
It's fine.
Banging something.
Fidget away. You just made a good point. You're like, I have to shift.
Exactly. Like Robert. Sorry, he didn't mean to call him out.
No, it's fine. He's like not gonna listen. Well, maybe he will.
He better listen.
Robert, if you're listening, turn it off now. No,
We're gonna talk shit.
We're gonna talk shit. Actually, that's our next episode. Is just talking shit.
I think we have to do that at some point. But what's interesting is like how you're talking about it is you're kind of flipping that again in a way.
So now it's like the Rinsta or whatever.
Yeah, which is really fascinating.
That also speaks to, which I think maybe this could be our last like conversation topic about this, is what each Instagram, what each social media site represents.
Yes!
Because Instagram is very much image curated. Yes. Twitter is very like, I think very shit post and very like I'm gonna word vomit out and like say something, or like kind of like self-deprecating. I don't know, that's the people I follow on Twitter. And like more humorous in a certain way. It's not as image based in some ways. And then like Facebook has kind of changed to be like more, like you said, like a social media version of LinkedIn. Or for older people, or like an actual social media site. I think. But
that's. I mean, I think that's how I would define them too. And then like, well, are we counting? TikToks. TikToks. I really know. I know what it's called. But yeah, obviously it's like little visual sound bites of things. But like, how would what is the majority?
I feel like it's become a mixture of what Instagram was or is, I guess, in some ways. But it's like a mixture of that and like YouTube.
Oh, it's
because
like a fast YouTube.
It's a fast YouTube because you get an image of somebody and you get like, there's also the like curated, I have this style, I'm cute, I'm gonna do this dance horribly, but look at me in this cute ass outfit and with my like tiny little waist, you know what I mean? Like that's like, I feel like the vibe of a lot of them. And then there can be, on TikTok, there are like communities that are more, shit posty, that are more like humorous, that are more like, oh, cute animals, which like there are those communities on every site.
Teaching things like
DIY
cooking videos, fashion, workout, which I feel like is, I have to adjust again these shorts.
I know.
Yeah, which I feel like is present on most platforms, but that it's this short video form on TikTok, which I feel like is very palatable for a lot of people.
Yes. And you get a little bit more of the personality than in like even an Instagram, like a post. I mean, now they're doing like the reels on Instagram, which is basically just like reposted TikToks usually. But there's more of like a personality to it. So in a way, it feels more real. Kind of how YouTube, though YouTube isn't always real, it can feel more real because it's like, hey, this is like a real person just like sitting and talking to me about something they're interested in.
Totally.
I guess same with podcasting. But you know, like that's how I kind of see TikTok. And why I think that it can be good is because you actually at least get to see like, here's a person's vibe as opposed to like, here's like a really like thin, attractive person, quote unquote, posing in a certain way
and only captures
one moment that like is incredibly like like a puppeteering
Yes.
kind of like master plan of how to present yourself in that way versus like just a video of like hey, I'm a
fluid.
person. Yeah, I'm like doing like a silly little dance.
Exactly. And it's harder to curate absolutely every moment, even if it's a couple second long video, than like creating one snapshot in time of a person, which is essentially like a lot of images on Instagram. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. Are we counting Snapchat? I mean, I feel like that is,
I forget that exists.
I know, because I feel like
don't use that anymore.
Yeah, I feel like among our peer groups maybe it's less
dying out.
Like Facebook, but in a different way.
Yes.
Less
almost for young people now.
I feel
more
like
so, I think.
exactly. Yeah. That's what I feel like when I hear younger people, as in like, you know, teens. I feel like Snapchat is very much, at least just from what I have witnessed, like very much a part of their sort of interactions, but like among our age group, definitely less so.
Yeah, I think that at least the way that it used to be when I was using it, it was kind of similar to Instagram, but a little less curated because it's not like a feed.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, like you watch something and it goes away.
Yeah.
It was almost like the stories of Instagram now, which I mean is essentially what they are,
well,
right?
Didn't like Snapchat stories were a thing before Instagram stories, right?
Yeah. They were. I don't remember when Instagram stories happened, but it was after.
Yeah.
One thing really quick, we can talk more about this on like a separate topic, but I just wanted to give a shout out when we were talking about TikTok that it's really important to note that like there's a real issue with like Black creators specifically and like creators of color too, but particularly Black creators not being credited, and then like white TikTokers like becoming famous for something that like somebody else started. And that's like just, I know that's not only true on TikTok, but it's become a particular part of conversation on TikTok. And I just wanted to like literally just say that because I think in the landscape of TikTok it's really important to say, particularly when we think about like in like Black innovation, right? And that's been a huge source of it. But once again, there's this stolen ideas by white creators, and once again, like they are the ones who profit off of it. You know, so
thank you for mentioning that. Very, very important.
Because my pen rolls. All right, I think that's it for the topic. Yeah.
Wow.
Look at us. All right. So, before we wrap up, it is time for some recommendations. Woo! The music. Okay. So my recommendation for today is I like just thought of it and I got like so blanked out. Is Jennifer's Body, which is now on Hulu. I first watched this movie. Oh God. I think like not right around when it came out, but like soon after, because it came out in like 2009, I think. Wait, no, actually, I think I saw it like right when it came out. Anyway, it's starring the gorgeous Megan Fox, who deserves better in general, and Amanda Seyfried. Seyfried? I don't know how to say her name. I'm so sorry, Amanda, if you're listening.
Because I'm sure she is.
Please email us, Amanda, if we incorrectly pronounced your name.
The phonetic spelling.
Yeah, please.
Pronunciation of your name.
Yeah. Or if there's any like Amanda Seyfried stands on here, like let us know.
Yeah.
Correct us. But it's a great movie. It's definitely like was part of my queer awakening for sure, and I think should be part of many people's queer awakening. And I feel like I've heard that a lot, but it's hilarious. It is, you know, kind of like spooky a little bit. It's really interesting, and it's a really interesting look at, I think, girls' relationships to each other, friendship, and like the inherently kind of toxic nature of like teenage years being a girl, but also the beauty of female like connection. Yeah, it's a really good movie. Yeah.
I want to watch that.
You should.
But I want to watch it with you.
Okay.
So I'm going to recommend a musical duo. I know I did music last time. I'll try to mix it up a little more, but I just, especially going with the theme of our lovely little Cuban breakfast this morning, I would like to recommend a duo, these twin sisters. They're French and Afro-Cuban duo of twin sisters. Their duo name is Ibei, which means actually in the Yoruban language, it translates to twins, which is very cool.
Mm.
So they were born in Cuba, and they sing in English and Yoruban. Their father was the conguero from the Buena Vista Social Club, Miguel Angel Diaz. So they have that kind of background, and yeah, their music is gorgeous. It's very unique. It kind of incorporates elements of Afro-Cuban roots music, and according to Spotify, because I want to like not just pretend that I'm making this up, electro doom soul. I don't exactly know what that means, that's why I'm referencing this, but they're incredibly talented, really beautiful. They're on Spotify. They have some videos on YouTube, so please do check them out.
Can you tell the listeners how to spell it?
Oh,
because I don't know how to
yeah,
spell it.
great, thank you. So it's spelled Ibei.
Ibei.
Ibei. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, because
I would not.
if I just listened to the site, I would
Yeah,
not
you'd be
have
like,
known.
what are you saying? No. Yeah.
All right, those are our recommendations.
So, thank you so much for listening. Our next episode should be out within a month.
So make sure to subscribe to us on whatever podcast service you're listening to us on right now, and you can follow us on social media, ironically. Instagram and Twitter, Cozy Cafe Chats. You can check out our curated feed, which, depending on when you listen to this, may not be that curated, because right now it has nothing on it. Yeah, I mean, it's there, but it has zero information. You can also email us and tell us about your experiences on social media, or tell us how to pronounce Amanda Seyfried at cozycafechats@gmail.com. See you next time.